Guys, welcome back to another video, and today I want to talk about my top 10 favorite Game Boy Advance games, this beautiful console right here. So let me start this off by saying there are a lot of amazing games on this console that I absolutely love, but for top 10 videos like this, I tend to prefer sticking to games that I really spent a lot of time with. Usually I try to pick games that I've beaten as well, especially on older consoles like this. Usually those games are going to be games more from my childhood. Sometimes there's a few exceptions in there, but with this console in particular, the Game Boy Advance, this was my childhood system. It was the first Nintendo system I ever owned, back before they had the nice backlit models here. And while there are a lot of amazing games on this console, my top 10 here is definitely my personal list. These are the top 10 games that I've put the most time into by far over the years. So there are a lot of all-time great games for the GBA that either I haven't played yet or I've started and haven't finished, and I've kind of been saving a lot of those for possibly a GBA for a month video or something of that sort. So if there's some heavy hitters that you're not seeing in my top 10 list, either I haven't played it or haven't finished it. So don't get offended if your favorite game isn't on here, but definitely let me know what your top 10 GBA games are down below, and let me know what you end up thinking of my list as well. Anyways, without further ado, let's get right into the list. Alright, and the first game on my list here, number 10, is Sonic Advance 2. Now, this is a Sonic game that you don't hear a lot of people talk about. This whole trilogy of the Sonic Advance games here. And the reason why I have 2 on my list is because, well, to put it simply, this was the first Sonic game I ever played, and it was the only game in the Advance trilogy on the Game Boy Advance here that I actually owned as a kid and played all the way through. This game is a super solid 2D Sonic game, and it was my introduction to the Sonic franchise. After this one, I kind of moved on to all the awesome GameCube games that were available, and from there it's history. But this was the game that got me hooked on Sonic as a kid, and that is why it is in my number 10 spot. And for number 9, we have kind of a similar story, and that is with my first ever traditional mainline Pokemon game, which is here Pokemon Leaf Green version. So just looking at the save file here, if you guys are seeing this footage on screen, which I'm sure you are, this is a classic beginner's Pokemon save file, because if you look at my team, I have my starter. I chose Charmander in this game. He's a Charizard now, obviously, and he is level 87. I literally went through this whole game only using my starter. I had no idea how to create a balanced team at the time. I was about 10 years old when I got this game, which is like the perfect age to start playing Pokemon, but not really, you know, the perfect age to know anything about strategy in a Pokemon game. So I was just blazing through the game with my tank of a Charizard, and as you can see, I also had some legendaries on my team, and that was pretty much all I used. I did find parts of this game pretty hard, I remember being a bit frustrated from time to time, but hey, you live and you learn. And that was my first experience with the Pokemon series right here in Leaf Green. Another funny memory I have with this game is the first time my Pokemon got poisoned. I was walking around and the screen was doing that thing where it would flash and like everything would get all weird and pixelated, and I thought there was something wrong with my game. But I'll never forget how much of a panic that caused me, because I thought that my game got water damage or something got in there. I was like, why is the screen getting all pixelated and this horrible noise keeps going on? But my Charizard was poisoned. That's all it was. It was probably a Charmander at the time, because it was definitely probably early on in the game, but yeah. But, you know, we got it all figured out, and I learned, hey, that's just what happens in these games when you have that status ailment. Anyway, moving on here to number 8, we have the very first Warioware game. Now, you'll see here I'm using a Japanese copy of the game, and that is because the original Warioware was actually my little sister's game. As she would always so adamantly tell me back when we were kids, that was her game. She purchased it with her own money back in the day. I had the GameCube version of WarioWare. She loved watching me play that, but she got the American copy of WarioWare on the GBA for herself. Now I have my own copy, so it's all good. Not that she wouldn't share with me nowadays. But this game is just a blast. Just classic Warioware. This is where it all started. Crazy fun mini games. You can't go wrong with any game in the Warioware series, and if you haven't played the original, it's really cool to see where this series started. Alright, at number 7, we have Metroid Zero Mission, the remake of the original Metroid game. And the reason why I have this one on the list is because this is, I believe, the only Metroid game I've ever beaten in my life. I like Metroid, but a lot of the games I just end up getting stuck, or they just don't stick with me, and, you know, I have a hard time with them. Same with the Castlevania games as well. The Metroidvania genre it's a genre that I really respect, and I want to get more into, but for one reason or another, I always bounce off Metroidvania games. But with Zero Mission, I don't know if it was because of the shorter length or whatever, but I saw this one all the way through to the end, and I really loved it. This was a game that I played kind of later on. This is not one that I grew up with, but yeah, Metroid Zero Mission is a great Metroid game. It's a great entry point to the series as well. So if you're interested in this one, definitely check it out, but it is my number 7 favorite GBA game of all time. Well, so that's the thing. With these top 10 lists, it's like, yeah, these are my top 10 games of all time, but at the same time, it's like, sometimes the reason why I hesitate to make these top 10 lists a lot of the time is because if you asked me on a different day, my list might look, you know, completely different. But, you know, it's all so subjective. You know, so that's why it's like, you know, don't be mad if you see something that you think doesn't deserve to be high, or you don't see one of your favorite games. It's all subjective. If you ask me what my top 10 GBA games were next week, it might look completely different. I don't really know. But this is what I'm feeling in this moment. So, moving on to number 6. Number 6, we have Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. Another great remake of an NES game. Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland is a really good Kirby game. I don't know what else to say. It's a really good Kirby game, and it is one of the first Kirby games I ever played. I first tried it out when I was having a sleepover at my friend's house, and I believe we were in 4th grade, so once again I was around 10 years old, and he had it for his Game Boy Advance. He let me borrow it. It was around Christmas time, I remember, and I had a gift card to GameStop, and this was back when GameStop would have like all their loose GBA games in like a plastic or a glass display case. And I remember they had a little copy of Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, and I had to go wait in line because it was like a couple days after Christmas, so it was really busy. I had to go wait in line to ask them for that game, and I was telling my mom which game I wanted, and the kid in front of me heard me say I wanted Kirby for the Game Boy Advance, and then he was telling his mom about Kirby, and then he was like, I'm gonna ask for that Kirby game in the glass case. And I was like, Mom, did you hear that? That kid wants Kirby, and it's the last copy. There's only one copy in there. So my mom, being super cool, got out of line, told me to stay right there, went up and told the GameStop manager, whoever it was, hey, just so you know, my son wants this Kirby game in the case. Can you put it on hold for him, and we're gonna wait in line and come pick it up. And then they put it aside for me. The kid in front of me asked for Kirby, and they're like, sorry, it's on hold for someone. And then I went up there, they gave me Kirby, I got Kirby, it was all good. The cartridge I have is the original cartridge that I got from GameStop that day. As you can see, it's kind of dirty, and, you know, that's unfortunately just the copy that they had. It looked like this when I got it. You know, I take really good care of my stuff. Even when I was a kid, I did. But yeah, that's my story with Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. As for the game itself, it's just a great classic Kirby game. I've replayed this one so many times, and this was like a game that it would always be in my Game Boy travel case. This is one I would always take places with me. So I got a lot of hours and put a lot of love into this Kirby game. So if you haven't played it, I definitely recommend it. That's my number 6. All right, number 5, we have another Pokemon game, but it's not what you're thinking. This one is a spin-off. This is Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team. So this is the game that I credit for making me fall in love with dungeon crawlers. I've been talking about dungeon crawlers a bit recently, and when I was going back to get some footage of this game, I was like, oh yeah, this is where my love for dungeon crawlers all started. So this is the very first Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game. You know, we had this one on the GBA, and it had a blue version on the DS. I played through that one back in the day as well. Love that game. They're the same game, just, you know, different versions. And then we had, you know, 3 original DS titles. We had the 3DS games. The rest is history. We had the remake on the Switch. You know the story. There hasn't been a new one since. It's very sad. This one right here was what made me realize, oh, this is a dungeon crawler. This is a mystery dungeon game, specifically a mystery dungeon game, and this made me really fall in love with that style of gameplay. I also always really loved how this game kind of expanded the Pokemon universe beyond what it originally was. You know, you're not a trainer, you're a human who has turned into a Pokemon, and you're going on these rescue missions, exploring these dungeons with all these other Pokemon characters, and you can talk to Pokemon, and they all have little unique personalities, and the story was pretty cool, and the sprite art in this game is just absolutely amazing. I love the way this game looks. And, you know, a lot of reviewers back in the day, I remember these mystery dungeon games used to get such bad review scores, which really stinks, because I think that these games are so good. There are times when I prefer going back and playing the mystery dungeon games over like the traditional mainline Pokemon games. I love them so much. So that is my number 5, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team. I forgot the name for a second. That's it. That's number 5. All right. Number 4. Number 4 is Yoshi's Island, the GBA version of the Super Nintendo game, because the Game Boy Advance is where I got my introduction to like classic Mario games. You know, they had 4 Mario Advance games. They were all remakes of old Mario games, and my favorite by far was this one right here, Yoshi's Island. To be honest with you, all 4 of the Mario Advance games are probably my most played games on the console, but I thought it would be boring if almost half my list was the Mario Advance series. And I know that the GBA versions of these games are considered the lesser versions of all of these games. They're much better on the consoles. You've got the bigger screen space and everything. Everything's a bit crunched on the Game Boy Advance, but it doesn't bother me because to me, growing up, these were Game Boy Advance games to me. I didn't even know that they were remakes or anything like that. I thought they were completely new original games, because this is how I first experienced, you know, Super Mario World, Mario 3, Yoshi's Island, and then the remake of Mario 2, which was Super Mario Advance 1. It was kind of confusing back in the day, but this is how I experienced all those games originally, and my favorite by far was always Yoshi's Island. I played this game so much. This might be my most played game on the GBA. Just the amount of times that I would play through it, start it over, and just, I loved it so much. This was also, I think this was the first 2D Mario game that I ever actually, like, beat. Like, I got to the final boss, I was able to beat it. That is my number 4. We've got Yoshi's Island. All right, number 3. Number 3. Some of you might have expected this to be number 1, but number 3, we have Pokemon Emerald, and just Pokemon Generation 3 in general. Pokemon Emerald, it's funny because growing up, specifically during the first 4 Pokemon generations, I used to always say that Gen 3 was my least favorite. I didn't really love as many of the Pokemon designs in these games as I did compared to Gens 1 and 2 and then 4. I was obsessed with Gen 4, but for some reason Generation 3, for me personally, I know it's like so many people's favorite Pokemon game, but for me personally, Gen 3 was kind of my least favorite out of those first 4 generations for the longest time. Now I hold the first 5 generations all to such a high regard, but it took a little bit of time for some reason for Gen 3 to grow on me, but now it's like, it's up there. As you can see, it's my number 3 spot on the list. I love this game. Unfortunately, I deleted my original save file. I don't know why I did that. I usually don't do that with Pokemon games, just because like each Pokemon game is like a journey that you go on, and then they're fun to look back at, you know, at some point in the future. I deleted my save in this game. I had completely beaten it. I, you know, had a cool team of Pokemon, and now they're all gone. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't do that recently. I was probably like a teenager and I wanted to start it over. So now my current save file only has 2 gym badges, so it is what it is. But that's Pokemon Emerald. Great game. One of the best Pokemon games ever, and one of the best Game Boy Advance games ever. All right, number 2, we have Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Originally, we had the game that kind of got me into dungeon crawlers with Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, and now here we have the game that I would say got me into turn-based RPGs. This was the first turn-based game I ever played, and it definitely was like really weird at first, but it is what made me fall in love with the genre. I got this game for Christmas when I was in first grade, and I just remember being like, oh cool, new Mario game, and then starting it up, and you know, there's this turn-based combat, you're kind of exploring a big world, and it was completely not what I was expecting. And at first I was kind of like, oh, this is weird, you know, I just want to run and jump and collect coins and stuff. But eventually I started to understand what this game was, and it quickly became one of my new favorite games of all time and got me into a whole new genre at a super young age. Oh my gosh, the first 3 Mario and Luigi games are just all so good. They're so good. So play them if you have the means to do so. But yes, that is my second favorite GBA game of all time. All right, number one is Mother 3. Where do I even start? I'll start by saying this is not a game that I grew up with, because Mother 3 never came out here in North America. It remained a Japan exclusive, where at the time of recording this video here in April of 2025, it still is a Japan exclusive. But thankfully, we do have a very handy fan translation. And back in, I want to say 2018, I bought this cartridge that you're seeing here that has the full English fan translation on it. And it was such a magical experience playing this game in English on original hardware for the first time. So for those of you who don't know, this is the sequel to Earthbound. The games are loosely connected, but I definitely recommend playing Earthbound first. And this is the third and final game in the Mother trilogy, and it is just one of the most beautiful games in terms of these lovely GBA colorful visuals, and the story is incredible, and the gameplay is just so good. You got the awesome turn-based combat with the, you know, the rhythm system where if you're tapping the button along to the beat of the music in a battle, you'll do extra damage, and the whole Mother series is so great. I do recommend playing all 3 of the games, honestly. Mother 3 is without a doubt my favorite GBA game of all time. I'm so glad that I finally just sat down and played it, and I think you should all do the same thing. You know, don't worry about waiting for an official translation, just find a way to play it and play it that way, because it's one of those games that if you're an RPG fan, or if you played Earthbound and you loved that and you're like, oh, I'll wait for an official release of Mother 3, stop torturing yourself. Just play it. Just, you know what I mean? Just go to Google and find the English version of Mother 3. You're not hurting anyone, okay? But there are my top 10 GBA games of all time. Once again, feel free to go down in the comments, let me know what you think of my list, and let me know your own list as well. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.